Well, we got breaking news out of the NBA. Kenny Atkinson deciding not to take the Hornets head coaching job. That's according to ESPN. Atkinson will instead remain with the Warriors as the team's lead assistant. Earlier this month, Atkinson signed a reported 4-year deal to replace James Borrego there in Charlotte. But instead, he's now returning to Golden State next season as the team goes for back-to-back titles. Well, now we bring in Bill Reiter, our NBA insider, here on the phone with us. Bill, your first reaction to this news is what?
Shocking. This obviously is pretty rare in any professional sport, including the NBA. Charlotte had made their hire, had turned away. They'd narrowed this down to a second choice in Mike D'Antoni. It's going to be very difficult to go back to him and say, just kidding, we love you after all. It's an embarrassment for that organization. It's very interesting and uncertain decision that he made, and whether this has to do with he sees himself elsewhere in the future and or staying in Golden State, or whether concerns about a Charlotte organization that frankly has not.
It was per ESPN Atkinson staying with Golden State there after further conversations, leading Atkinson to believe it would be a best fit to remain there with the Warriors. Bill, you kind of touched on it there. You'd have to think it's so hard to leave a championship team. Could we see other reasons that he wouldn't accept this job?
So this is all speculation, Sherry, but there's a few things I can give your way. Obviously, it's breaking news, so much of this is speculation. But as soon as the news came down, I started texting some sources with the Warriors and just some folks around the league. And one person I trust, and again, they were speculating. They don't have inside information, but they're very connected in the NBA, speculated to me, their guess, their first reaction was that perhaps Steve Kerr, there's a sense that Steve Kerr maybe understands when his transition to not being the Warriors coach will happen, whether that's a year or 2 or 3. There's certainly been talk over the years with Steve Kerr's past health issues with his back and this 4th championship that at some point he might want to do something else or step away. That's one speculation. It certainly comes to mind. I think it's certainly worth considering that Atkinson, came to the decision that Michael Jordan-run organization, despite the fact that Mitch Kupchak is in charge of basketball operations, has just been inconsistent to the point where he doesn't want to have that be his next stop. And then I think you hit on this. There's just I think maybe the factor, and it could be all the above, but the third factor is they just won an NBA championship. The Warriors, along with the Celtics and the Nets, are the betting favorites to be champions next year. It is an overwhelmingly positive and happy culture. People like being in that locker room. They like being in that front office. They like being a part of that Steve Kerr coaching staff. People like going to work when they're at Golden State. And so maybe the combination of the fact they just won a championship, there's more to come, and he doesn't want to leave for Kenny Atkinson played a role in his pretty shocking decision to turn away from a job he already agreed to.
It would be hard to walk away from a championship, but 4 in the last 8 years out there in Golden State. Bill, what kind of boost is this for Golden State to be able to keep Atkinson, or maybe a better way to say it, no drop-off, that he's still going to be in their building?
Yeah, I mean, look, if Kenny Atkinson had gone to Charlotte, the Warriors are still the betting favorites. But any time that you're number 2 on the coaching pecking order decides to stick around, and you have that level of consistency, and obviously for Steve Kerr, there's a level of trust with him and the rest of his staff, it is significant. And I think it speaks not just to the fact that voice, Atkinson's voice, will still be in the mix, and the things that he's done well that earned him the opportunity to get and turn down the Charlotte job is still going to be now a part of what benefits the Warriors. I think it's also the fact that it again reflects and I know people roll their eyes, but the culture in Golden State and what they've built there from the very top of ownership down to the last player on the bench is a significant factor. People within that organization will tell you that they've had the success that they've had. So I think Atkinson's decision to remain in large or small part reflects that fact.
Take us inside now the Charlotte front office. What is Michael Jordan doing? What is he saying? How do you think this is going to reflect on their franchise under his reign?
Yeah, well, it doesn't reflect well. And I actually feel bad for Mitch Kupchak, who's the GM, who I think did a very nice job in L.A. and was forced out, in part because he did not get along with the Buss family member who became the principal owner and took control in Jeannie Buss. But Mitch Kupchak did a nice job in L.A. and has done a nice job, I think, in Charlotte. But it is a continued, I think, fair, not fair reminder that a lot of people consider that organization to be something at times of a clown show. And maybe through no fault of their own in this case. We don't know the details, but Atkinson agreed to this job. And Charlotte felt like they had a plan in place. they had narrowed down their decision-making to Atkinson and to Mike D'Antoni. And as I understand it from sources, one of the reasons they went with Atkinson is because they like what he had done in his time with the Nets in helping to grow and groom young talent, his ability to bring out the best in some of those young players in his last head coaching stint. That obviously would be an important factor in Charlotte. They have some very promising young players. And so now, do they start over at the drawing board? Do they go to Mike D'Antoni? It's almost like asking someone to the prom after you already told her you're going with her friend. It's extremely awkward. So it's certainly a very embarrassing and I'm sure frustrating moment for that organization.
That was exactly my next question for you. Where does Charlotte go now looking for their next head coach? Do they have to circle back to those other candidates? And what kind of guy are they looking for to take over after all of this on top of that?
Yeah, I like I know Mike D'Antoni. I like him. We both lived in the same actually part of L.A. Used to bump into the guy and obviously have covered him when he was a coach. He's a really good person. And I think we throw the word Sherry genius around, but he really is an offensive genius. That said, like all of us, Mike has some weaknesses, and they include setting boundaries, maybe building the right culture. He's a tactical genius, not necessarily the most skilled person on the face of the earth in interacting with the locker room. And that is, again, a culture in Charlotte, not Mike D'Antoni's fault, but a culture in Charlotte that has been broken. So you want someone who comes, like Kenny Atkinson, from a strong culture that can maybe put that into place. And Mike D'Antoni's inability sometimes to connect to his players in the right way doesn't necessarily bode well if you're trying to raise up a really young team that's built around LaMelo Ball and some other guys in that organization. So for me, and not just me, people I've talked to around the NBA when they went with Atkinson over D'Antoni, for me and the sources I've talked to, Mike D'Antoni probably isn't the right choice, but it's sort of a catch-22 now because the reason that Michael Jordan, that organization, as I understand it from sources, went with the two guys they did and eventually Atkinson is because they don't have necessarily the imagination to go out and get some of the assistants a lot of folks don't know, like Ime Udoka or Nick Nurse or Brad Stevens several years ago when he came out of Butler. And you have to sell Michael Jordan on these names. And Michael Jordan, sources tell me, likes just that. He likes names. And so it's a really difficult position for this organization to figure out whether you go back to D'Antoni, who's probably not the right fit for the reasons we just talked about, or you try to find the right fit, but you don't know if you can sell that person to Michael Jordan.
Story we're definitely going to be following. Bill Reiter there, thank you for the insight. As we're learning, Kenny Atkinson deciding not to become the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, instead remaining a top assistant at Golden State. And here you have it, a look at his profile as a head coach, all with the Nets. Missed the playoffs there, you see, except that one time he made a 2018-2019 season. They ended up losing there in the first round.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.